So I'm going to give you guys kind of, two different perspectives. One is kind of the team lead and how the team lead's using the Hive, and then how the rest of the team is going to be operating in the Hive. So typically when you land in the Hive, you'll have maybe one or no cases, maybe, depending on how far into, the day we are. But typically what a team lead's going to do at this point, the start of an exercise or the start of a real world event is, maybe they're ingesting alerts from any number of sources. And so the team lead is traditionally going to be the point on coming in and looking at the inbound alerts to triage them and decide how they're going to be handled by the IR team, because that team lead needs to make some key decisions about the alert. Is it relevant to the real world situation that we're dealing with right now? Because if a customer brought us into a network to understand why they got ransomware last night, then I don't care about alerts that have nothing to do with that incident. Until I know that it has some connection, I might choose to not deal with that alert at that moment. And so the team lead would come in and say, look at the oldest alert in the queue here, some sort of ISAC alert about an active campaign. And so by previewing that alert, as the team lead, it gives me an opportunity to, first of all, read the description, right? Understanding that this is some threat intelligence about an active campaign. There's many organizations being hit by this campaign. And traditionally, the way an ISAC works is it's an information sharing community for a specific industry. So if we're subscribing to this ISAC, it's probably because it's a relevant industry to ours. So it's already a relevant piece of intel to us. But I'm even given some specifics around the theme of the campaign. It's telling me that someone's complaining about food poisoning in the email. It's a spearfish, right? A social engineering attempt, and they're even using a pretty predictable theme about food poisoning. And so as the team lead, I'm making some key decisions right now. Okay, this looks like something significant. It's relevant. It's from the ISAC. We should probably at least do a triage investigation to understand, are we impacted by this? So what I will do as the team lead is I will make a decision to create a case based on this alert, because a case is basically a container of work that my team is going to be doing. So I will import the alert as a new case. So now we are looking at a brand new case in the Hive. You can see here it's case number 2. It brought in the subject of that alert, being it's an ISAC alert, active campaign observed. Okay, and it even brought in that description. And if we click over here in the observables tab, it even brought in all of those IOCs that the ISAC shared with us, which is super useful. Because the next thing that I'm going to do as a lead is I'm going to decide what are the work units that need to be handed out to the team. Now, especially on larger teams, this is going to become critically important because these tasks are going to get out of hand very quickly. So if you're a large enough team that you have specialties within your team, for instance, host analysts or network analysts or intel analysts, well, then I would start to think about tasks in those buckets. So for instance, one of the first things I might do as a team lead is I might have a threat intel person, go and enrich these observables, right? All these different IOCs here that we just got from the ISAC. Well, I want to know more about those IOCs. I want to know, have we ever seen them before? Are they connected to any other cases we've worked? And a threat intel person might be able to quickly add some enrichment to the very little bit of information that the ISAC's given us. And so, for instance, I might create a task. And if I want to, I can use a group to help me kind of logically, group up these tasks. So I might say Intel. And the task title would be, research IOCs from Intel report, and provide however much detail you want to provide there. So remember, I'm the lead here. I'm kind of role playing as the lead of this team, and I'm creating these tasks. Now, another thing that I might do is remembering the description of this alert that came from the ISAC. They're giving me a very strong hint here about something I might want to be looking for. They're saying that there's keywords in these email subjects, specifically the word urgent and the phrase food poisoning. So that might be something else that I want to dispatch out to teams. So depending on the data sources that you have access to, in this range, we have Moloch, which is fantastic for looking at emails because emails are clear text. So I might send this out to the network analyst team, because it's going to be primarily a network related artifact, we're going to look for, search for inbound email subjects containing urgent and food poisoning, right? So I'm extracting out, threads from that initial alert or the threat intel or whatever it is that we have, and I'm breaking it down into tactical tasks that different specialists can now run with, right? So now I'm going to switch hats for a minute, all right? So now I'm the network analyst, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking for tasks to take. Well, hopefully my team lead would have assigned this to me, so I'll go ahead and do that. So the team lead said, hey, I've just assigned this to my network analyst. All right, great. So now as the network analyst, I come along and maybe through the My Tasks tab up here, or I can just see that I have a task that's been assigned to me. I'm going to go ahead and start work against this task. So I know based on the title of this task what the intention is. Now, if the team lead wanted to, it never hurts to add a description and go way deeper, right? We need to find all emails, so on and so forth. The more information, the better, but this is a pretty straightforward task, so I'll just run with it. So as the network analyst, I now know what the intentions are. I'm looking for emails containing urgent or maybe food poisoning or any combination of the above. So I'll take that straight to my tool, Moloch. Right? Now, I'm not going to go through the analysis of this entire scenario. I'm only going to show you a couple previews to show you how that feeds back into the usage of the Hive. So here I am in Moloch looking for email subjects with the word poison in it. And right away, I've got some hits, right? I can see I've got potentially two different threads here where I've got a sender of jflowers at corp.net and Brett Driggs as a receiver at corp.net. So right away, I can at least say, yep, I've got hits, right? So, as a verbose analyst, if I want to keep my team lead up to date, yep, we have hits. And what I can do is I can share kind of the query that I used. Used this query to find emails. And you notice how I just kind of put that query in backticks? That's so that it will render it as code. So it kind of looks a little cleaner there. And I'm just going to add that log. Now, that log doesn't say a whole lot, but it doesn't need to say a whole lot. I'm just trying to keep my team lead in the know on the task that he's assigned to me so that he knows that I'm chipping away at it piece by piece. So as I'm continuing to analyze this, right, as a network analyst, and I'm pulling out the metadata that's going to be important here, it's important that I'm taking an opportunity to extract those key observables, right? Observables are any number of things from domain names to email addresses to email subjects. The sky's the limit here. So a couple of key observables that I'm looking at right now would obviously be the sender of this potentially malicious email, right? It should stand out for a few reasons, but I think the biggest reason is, if you notice, it's kind of a typo here in the domain name. So they're trying to appear to be our corporation's email address, but it's not. It's off by a character there. So that's more than likely malicious and my attacker. So remember, I'm still my network analyst right now. I'm going to come back to this case, and I'm going to, I can make a task log and say, attacker sent emails from, this J Flowers address. And that's great and all from a documentation perspective, but what's even more important than that is actually loading it as a true observable against the case, because that's where the real power of the Hive comes in, guys. When I come in here and I say I've got a mail type observable, and here it is, I'm going to say yes, it's an IOC, because every theory I have right now insists that that's a malicious email address. Yes, I have cited it. Tags are a bit superfluous at this point because this is kind of a one-time use Hive instance, so tags aren't going to be super useful to us. So you just put whatever you want there. But then I'll say, sender's email address of malicious, spearfish campaign, so that anyone who comes behind me understands where this observable came from. And if I want to add even additional context, maybe I'll grab this email subject here and include that in the description, subject, whatever, so that it helps people understand where that observable came from. So that's going to be super helpful to load those observables in this way, because one of the most powerful features of the Hive, and threat intel folks really dig in on this one, is the ability to run automatic OSINT analyzers against every single one of these observables. So remember, the observables we're looking at right now are the ones that came in on the ISAC threat alert, right? But let's just pretend for a minute I just loaded all these observables from all of my great analysis that I've just done. But now I want to know, what does the world know about these IP addresses, these hashes, in this, this domain, this email address? Well, this is where the Hive really makes its money. I'm just going to select every single one of these observables. Now, I could have been more targeted than that, but for GWiz, let's go ahead and select them all. Up here under Action, I'll hit Run Analyzers. So in the Run Analyzers menu, I can select any one of these OSINT sources to reach out to automatically to query for this hash, this IP address, this domain name, whatever you can imagine. So I'm just going to say Select All, why not? And then Run Selected Analyzers. Now, so what that just did was that just kicked off a bunch of batch jobs on the back end. So you don't immediately see anything happening. But within a matter of minutes, what you're going to start to see are a flood of reports coming in underneath each one of these observables, giving you a bit of a preview as to how actionable that observable is. So for instance, if virus total says 57 out of 63 engines said that this thing is malware, you're going to know it pretty quickly here. So you're starting to see actually these little colored labels start to show up. That's what we call a short report coming in from the OSINT sources to kind of just give you a preview into what that OSINT source had to say. So anyway, it's going to take some time considering I just ran 30 different analyzers against 10 different observables. So we'll come back to that in a few and sort of see what that looks like when a lot of intel is kind of flooding back. So again, back to my task here, as the network analyst, I'm documenting every single thing that I'm doing here, right? Extracted observables from email campaign, loaded against case and executed analyzers, right? Just so that everyone kind of knows that I've done my part here. I'm doing the thing that I need to do. And then of course, if the team lead has additional requests of me, they could jump in here and say, hey, do you mind, extracting observables, load them into the Hive, run the analyzers, and so on and so forth. Another interesting thing, just as we're talking about observables, is obviously if some of these observables came in from the threat intel report, that means that the ISAC is sharing those with us, but we have maybe not necessarily observed them ourselves, right? So as our analysis starts to show us, wait a minute, and I know a couple of teams did exactly this. They found observables that were also contained in the ISAC's intel report. Well, then it's important to kind of come back and say, wait a minute, this domain here that the ISAC shared with us, we have now cited it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to toggle that flag. Has been cited and is an IOC, obviously, because it's a domain used by the C2 beacon. So as you can see, I've dialed into the context of this exact observable. So we can actually kind of look at its entire description here. We can manipulate the IOC flag, the has been cited flag. I can add tags to it, but now I can also see that all of these analyzers are currently running for it right now. So just a way to kind of get a deeper dive on a particular observable. All right, so that covers, for the most part, all of the kind of key high-level tasks and task breakdowns that folks should understand. Some lower level sort of use cases, like I said, if you have a larger team where you have an overall team lead, but then you also have kind of sub-element leads, then maybe how that works is instead of me handing out tasks to 18 different people, what I might do is I might first assign a task to the lead over the network analysis folks. So if the lead network analysis is, John Doe, I'm going to assign it to him. I'm going to let him decide who the downstream analyst is that's actually going to take that task and run with it, so that we're better leveraging, hierarchy of command and control to make it more manageable. But the most important thing that that folks need to understand is the Hive, just like any other documentation system, will very quickly fall into disarray if anyone and everyone is just sort of kind of, choosing their own task or making their own cases, or, it really needs to be kind of a top-down sort of structure here. Leads or element leads need to be deciding what useful tasks are, because they are the ones that have the bigger picture situational awareness over what is important to the mission partner and what is important from a DFIR perspective in answering the key questions, right? So that's why there's a pecking order here. It's not to micromanage, but it's to ensure that we're most effectively allocating resources. Because guys, in a real world situation, it's going to feel very much like it does in this range. You're going to have very little time to figure out a whole lot of information, and there's never going to be enough time. So having that kind of clear communication path between leads and analysts is really a defining success factor here.